for posterity, just know I really gave a wonderful introduction YouTube, and I forgot to record it. You can, just a couple of housekeeping items before we begin with our wonderful readers tonight. You can find us on all of the socials, and by that I mean Facebook and Instagram. We are not on Twitter because not even Jeremy and I hate each other and ourselves that much. And also we are not on Parler for obvious reasons. We have, let's see, 9 readers tonight of the 10 folks who are in this issue, which can be found at www.sortes.co. That's our new website, brand new website. I'll drop all of that in the chat, as well as our Facebook and Instagram. We're going to get started right away, but for those of you who are not reading, please do mute yourselves, but feel free to unmute after each performance to show your appreciation, usually via clapping. Also, please make sure to use the chat to engage and commune with one another. Like I said, we're going to have 9 readers. Right in the middle, we will have a brief intermission so you can refill your cups and take a comfort break. And now, without further ado, or gilding the lily of any kind, we will begin with Robert Wexelblatt. Robert is a professor of humanities at Boston University's College of General Studies. He has published 8 collections of short stories, 2 books of essays, 2 short novels, 2 books of poems, stories, essays, and poems in a variety of journals, and a novel awarded the Indie Book Awards Prize for Fiction. Please welcome Robert.
Woo! Oh! Thank you very much, and thanks for taking the story, and thanks for letting me lead off in case I should doze or anything like that. I'm only going to read a part of the story that you published because it would take too long to read all of it. But just a brief word of context, of explanation. The story and this enterprise violates a number of strictures. One is write what you know. This is from a series of stories about a peasant in the Shui dynasty of China, circa 600 CE. So there's one violated. And the other is cultural appropriation. No one has accused me of this, probably because there are no longer any Chinese people from the Shui dynasty. So I'm lucky so far. So the story is about a character that it's an imaginary peasant who becomes a poet after performing a service for the emperor and choosing as his reward, other than the money they offer him, an education, which results in his becoming a poet, which results in his becoming a vagabond, supporting himself by making straw sandals as he wanders around the empire. It was a one-off experiment a long time ago, but the character wouldn't leave me. He's become a kind of alter superego and a collaborator. And when there were 29 stories, they became a book last year. But now there are 9 posthumous ones. And Sortes was kind enough to take one of those. The title of it is Shui Wei at the Moon Festival. You won't hear too much about the Moon Festival in the first part of the story, but I'll get started and finish as fast as I can. That summer, Chen Shui Wei traveled through the emperor's westernmost province, Langzhou. It had been 7 years since the peasant poet left Dajing to become a vagabond, selling his straw sandals and leaving behind him those verses that would eventually win him a measure of fame. He was still in his 20s. It would be years before he would receive invitations to stay in the villas of high officials and to banquets by their cultured wives, eager to show him off to their friends. Back then, Shui Wei found shelter in the towns as he did on the road, whatever he could afford. He looked out especially for rundown inns. If the place had a stable, he could usually stay in it for hardly any money, sometimes for just a pair or 2 of straw sandals. If the weather was fine, he could sleep out of doors, but when it was not, he would talk his way into barns, storerooms, pantries, and on one occasion, a closet. On the 15th of Osmanthus, shortly before noon, Shui Wei passed through Yishang's North Gate. Though it was the day of the Moon Festival, few people were on the streets. All day, rain had been pouring down from a gloomy, sunless sky, and it was unseasonably cold as well. Shui Wei arrived in town drenched and shivering. Not far from the gate, he spotted an inn that still showed traces of red paint on its gray boards. Behind it was a small stable, which looked on the point of falling down. Shui Wei went inside the inn, hoping to warm himself, but the main room felt damp and chilly. However, at the far end, under a hole in the ceiling, the landlord had set up a brazier. The locals had pulled stools up in a tight circle around the fire where they drank and gossiped. Nobody looked at the dripping stranger trembling with cold. Shiwei noticed a doorway and peered inside. A heavy-set man with an ugly mustache over his lips and a cleaver in his hand stood at a high table cutting up pork, cabbages, and spring onions. A basket of eggs rested next to a big pot of water on the table. Shiwei had heard that the local specialty was boiled pork prepared with a coating of egg white. The innkeeper gave Shiwei a contemptuous glance and said, "You look like a half-drowned puppy." "I would like to stay the night here," said Shiwei. The man pointed with his cleaver. "I have 2 good rooms up there, clean ones. You don't look like you've got enough money for either of them." "Most likely not," Shiwei replied, "but I would be grateful if you would permit me a corner in your stable. I can pay with some good straw sandals." "So you're a sandal maker. Well, it's late in the year for straw sandals and I don't need any, but I'll let you stay if you make a pair for my wife and 1 more for her mother. 1 big, 1 small." Shiwei gave a short bow. "That is agreeable, thank you." The landlord grunted. "It's settled. Now go in with those others before you start sneezing all over me and this pork." In the main room, there was still no place by the fire. Just then, Shiwei heard the sound of a horse's hoofs outside, and a minute later, the door swung open and a tall man in a dripping official's gown came in, shaking out a soaked fur cap. He was distinguished looking, spare, about 40, with an intelligent face and keen eyes. The men around the brazier looked at him apprehensively. The man ignored their gaze and called for the innkeeper. Seeing the official's gown, the landlord adopted a deferential manner. "What can I get for you, sir? Wine? Perhaps you want a room?" "First, you can see that my horse is stabled and brushed dry," said the official. "Yes, sir, I'll send the boy at once." Shiwei was still shivering by the door right next to the newcomer, who turned toward him and smiled. "We're both in the same state," he said, then nodded toward the circle of men around the fire. "It's cold here, but it looks warm enough over there." "They won't make room by the fire," Shiwei observed. The official grinned. "I believe I can fix that. Look, whatever happens, just stay where you are." Then he summoned the landlord again. "What have you got to eat?" he demanded. "I've been preparing our famous liang pork, Your Honor. There's some ready now." "Excellent. Please put the meal in a bowl and take it out to my horse." "What? To your horse?" The official took out a purse and shook it so that the innkeeper could hear the sound. "Yes, take it to my horse and do it as quickly as possible. We've been on the road the whole wet morning and the poor beast's famished." The men around the fire paid close attention to this astonishing exchange. Their mouths fell open. The landlord scratched his head, looked at the purse, shrugged, and vanished into the kitchen. A few minutes later, he came out with a large clay bowl and headed out the door. All the men around the fire got up and followed him. They'd never seen a horse that ate yang pork. As soon as they were gone, the official sat down on one of the stools closest to the fire and motioned for Shiwei to join him. The man stretched his hands towards the heat. "Now, that's better." A minute later, the innkeeper came back with the bowl, followed by the locals. "Your horse wouldn't touch the pork," the innkeeper complained. "Well, that's a pity," said the official, "but never mind. Just put the pork by the fire here. It'll make a good meal for me and my new friend." The official glanced at the poet and raised his eyebrows. "Chen Shiwei, sandal maker, at your service." The official gave Shiwei a nod that was friendly rather than imperious. "Wang Zhiguo, assistant magistrate of Meishan. Will you join me in the meal?" "Gladly," said Shiwei. "Clever way to get those warm stools and generous to share your horse's feast with me." Wang gave Shiwei an avuncular smile. The brotherhood of distress. The locals filed out, grumbling. And I'll stop there because I've used up enough time. Thank you for your attention and silence.
No more silence. Make some noise. Woo! Hooray, Robert. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Robert. That is a wonderful story, and please do go read the rest of it. I was pretty mesmerized. I wasn't ready for Robert to stop, but please, maybe we can get him to record the whole thing someday. Yes, thank you very much. It's a lovely story.
Can I just ask, will you read at some point, not now necessarily, but the poem at the end is beautiful.
So it's very short, but without the rest of the story, it may not make much sense.
It may not. Kevin, do you mind if he reads that just few lines?
It's only 5 lines. Okay.
Yeah.
For 7 autumns, I'd walked the empire's rutted roads alone. But that night in Yisheng, Wang Zhuguo and I drank together. We polished off 2 jugs of yellow wine, glad not to be alone. We wallowed in memories sweet as mooncakes, yet painful to tell. All night, Chang'e watched over us as if she shared our homesickness. Chang'e is the moon goddess, and also the name that the Chinese gave to their rocket that went to the moon, by the way.
Woo! Now music. That's enough music.
That poem reminds me of many nights that Jeremy and I have shared together with wine under the moon. Very good. Thank you, Robert. And next up, we have Kailey Tedesco. Kailey is the author of She Used to Be on a Milk Carton by April Gloaming Publishing, Lizzie Speak, and Forever House, both White Stag Publishing. She is the senior editor for Luna Luna magazine, and she teaches literature and writing in Bethlehem, PA. You can find her work featured in Black Warrior Review, Fairy Tale Review, Gigantic Sequins, Passages North, The Journal, and more. For further information, please visit KaileyTedesco.com, which will be in the chat. Please welcome Kailey Tedesco.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin and Jeremy, for having me and letting me be a part of Sorts. I'm going to do something I don't usually do, which is read off of my phone. So bear with me. It might not be as smooth. But I'm going to read my 3 poems that were featured in this recent issue of Sorts. So this first poem is called A Horror, a Vision. What if on my porch end, like guards, I had 2 lions made of stone? And what if, like in space, where I become unsure if I am myself or looking inside myself, one of those lions spoke. I am only partially fed the dream blood, but once I've tasted, I cannot exhume the lust. Oniric is what you might call a dress with puff sleeves, an outfit worn on the round bed of a sex motel, overdressed and apple fat with ruffle. What if what the lion said could bury me into the layers of gown and the layers of blood and the layers of self that only exist during the sleeps that paralyze me? All I can remember is the magma of my nightmare robed in orb, me spelling the name of my favorite childhood toys before a mirror like a micro recital. All I can remember is the swans playing dead, heads bowed against the brim of the highway, a corsage of feather, bread leavened before our very eyes. I have lost all my sobbed candies. All around me, a house monsters itself from the sounded alarm of an intruder on a crinkling stairway, from the way my bloodstream plays whisper down the lane. What if, like a guard, the lion spoke in devil's tongues, gave me books to sign? What if all I ever wanted was to be protected? Thank you. This next poem is I was born en call. I was born covered in fur. Unholy, I enter through a god helmet as your very own divine, miniaturized for pocket keeping, a religion of lint and lanugo. The Estes method unwraps me, my speech a steam, girdle sucked, reversed tea kettle. There is nowhere left to hide, and there are only pines and pines and pines, each of them a musical, a singing goat's head, veil obscured, graves grow new trees. You can bouquet for centerpieces. I enter through a hypnotic trance, unprayed, green needles spooling from my birthmarks. It was here you begot me in this house of my breathlessness. Here that you legend me with broomsticks between my legs and legs and legs, the most plural a thing can ever be. You'll tell them I'll come in the night to pluck at their blood, a gowned finger thieving frosting from the side of a cake. I have always wondered, speaking from where it is I have entered your rituals, how it is you can make so much from so little. And this last poem is hagiography. The whole of my small life glassed and votive, see me for what I have done. Thank you, nursemaid, for placing my doubt cake in the dirt. Now it sprouts flowers, mulberries itself into an entire tree of bones you'll use to dig up weather. This grief subsumes the way it never does. I've dug my own little holes to plant the offerings for the demon for whom I am the legal guardian. There's no chicken feast here, no natural source of running water. I am chapel drunk, waving stones over my plated eyeballs, trying to find my old child dreams in the trick bookcases. The toads will sing hymnals, and I will chant along pitchy with them, my body a shiver next to your body. Tadpoles, entire little lives swimming in it. I can feel myself knowing there are so many more robes to be worn. Thank you.
Woo! Nobody talk until I get Spotify back. Hold on. Here it is. Okay, enough of that.
Thank you very much, Kailey. I believe I was privileged enough to hear Kailey read from her book, Lizzie Speak, once, and it was amazing. I highly recommend seeking it out. I think that was at the Spiral Bookcase, which foreshadowing we'll talk about later. Next up, we have Christian Bufo. Christian was published in E-Ratio and has work forthcoming in Stone of Madness Press and Impossible Archetype. Born first in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, they grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. As an infant, they felt especially unlucky at this turn of events, for they longed for New Jersey. However, they still live across the Delaware River in Philadelphia. At least that last part I can identify with very closely. Please welcome Christian Bufo.
Hi, everybody. Everybody hear me? Right? I'm good? Okay, thank you for publishing me. I'm not going to read those poems because I don't like them anymore, but I still think they're good. But
I'm taking him off the website as we speak.
all right, here's some other ones. I'm gonna get right into it. All right, this one's called Cat's Eye. Yellow collects on the shores of islets like seagulls nesting in cliffs overlooking the Atlantic, a water taut with suffering and burning now. Oil sags comfortably between every rolling bosom and reaches out to air like the light of daybreak, reaches out to the already shrunken pupils of eyes ignited by flames only moments before. Make it quiet, because I don't think you hear that. All right, this one's called
Yeah.
As I Lay Ablaze. As I lay ablaze in this fuzzy connection, my solitary bedroom bridges to yours through a special feeling that jumps about frightfully like a child bouncing on a limb of an old oak. A certain fuel guides the yellow electric around my skin, inside and out, coating me like a tight nylon sweater. But really, this excitement falls from the ceiling, atom by atom, like the first snow of winter. It's bottled up over many months. And you, like a match to my hairspray, I feel you burning the hairs of my knuckles to a crisp. Witching hour. When finally all the I love yous written in fingertips before roller coasters are gently smoothed by the iron of the sea, the moon is satisfied enough to come out and play like an anxious cat at midnight. This one is called Paranoia. Footprints in glass surround me. Like chewed aluminum foil, their imprints are made from conversation. A history of letters. I know this cipher well, but a collection of words does me as much good as the worry in my chest. All right. They say burning hair smells horrible, but flesh is familiar, like hot dogs on starter logs, and you, under moonlight or not, drinking the seawater, it being blue and all, the last discovered color. And this is the last one. It's called Staticky Blanket. Numbness breathes like an electric shock. Its cave erupts into the space of its inside, and the stream is sucked through a vacant, open-mouthed smile. Stalactites clench stalagmites in a shiny and yellow grin, unfolding after every exhalation into a dim hole where you can hear the echo of DNA rattling its bones like Charon waiting by the sticks. And that's it.
Woo! Make some noise.
Yes,
I love
thank you,
noise.
Christian. We love old and new poems.
Hold on, wait. Something has to happen right here.
Well, I went out just a walking about, and I walked upon a wild little Joe.
That's all.
Thank you, Christian. And up next, we have Konstantinos Patrinos, who holds a Master of Arts degree in Social Sciences from Humboldt University in Berlin, Germany. He is a high school teacher for political science and philosophy. His master's thesis on the philosophy of Soren Kierkegaard was published by Lagos Verlag, and he lives in Berlin with his wife and daughter. Thank you and welcome all the way from Berlin. Thank you for calling in.
Thank you very much for reading my boring bio. First of all, I'm very excited to be here. So thank you for the invitation and for accepting my poem. Second, this is my first poetry reading ever. Not only the first, but also one not in my native language. So I apologize in advance if I make any mistakes in pronunciation or something like that. Okay, I have the poem is called An Ordinary Night. Let me check. Okay. Death Drive speeds on a dark country road. Calm deer eyes reflect headlight beams as they get wider and wider until both flip in the air like a coin, landing on the side you didn't pick. Smoke climbs smoothly up the tall trees' humid sweat. You could swear this elegancy couldn't possibly be the doing of the last breaths of an engine wedded to a set of full-blown horns. The cold wind drags unwilling tears out of an observatory's glass eye. Modern Cyclops throwing his stare at you like a bird flying into a windshield of a driving car on the highway. The darkest sediments of history echo from your family's tree lowest branches to your photograph on the treetop just to mess with you in your dreams without even having to know your name. But you won't wake up even if the dog's lucid bark tears down the black blanket, a crumpled rug lying on the ground. You wish the moon would skip the phase during which the emergent werewolf skin becomes rougher, thicker, claws growing out of his nails. In the morning, the clock still sounds like the click of a gun pointing at you. Today's calendar quote already waiting with its tongue, panting joyfully by your bed. Life puts you back in quotation marks, and you're thinking, it feels good to be here. Thank you very much.
Woo! Hooray for unmuting. Hold on. Wait. You get some bluegrass for that. Thank you so much.
Went out last night to take a little round. I met a little city and I blowed her down. I run right home while I went to bed. 44 smoke loose out of my head.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you very much, Konstantinos. Up next, we have Victoria Mier. Victoria is a writer, independent bookstore owner, and antique dealer. She was published extensively as a journalist in a previous life. That was the Philadelphia Inquirer, Philadelphia Magazine, Reading Eagle. But these days, you can find her fiction and poetry in Luna Luna magazine and a Witch's Craft magazine, as well as Vulnerary magazine later in 2021. Follow her on Instagram on her bookshop's page at Spiral Bookcase for unhinged book reviews and pictures of the shop cat Calliope. And one fun fact, which I found earlier, I'm plugging the Spiral Bookcase bookshop, which is reopening very soon in Manny MPA. And Jeremy, Eric Tenenbaum, and I met at a Spiral Bookcase. Sold me. So I have him to thank for all of this. When he sold me a copy of The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy, and that none of you, which I still haven't read, and why none of you are allowed to have a nice Friday night alone with your loved ones. Please welcome Victoria Mier with her wonderful spooky stories. Victoria.
I actually listened to a lot of bluegrass when I was writing this, incidentally, so that works. Thank you, Jeremy and Kevin, for publishing this very unhinged pandemic story. So if you want to read the whole thing, you will have to go to the Sorts website. I'm going to read you the beginning and a little tease. This story is thematically similar to a lot of the things I write, but it's in first person, which I almost never do. But now I'm excited about it because it's way more fun to read a story in first person because you can kind of, make it a character. So this is osteomancy. Here we go. I want you to know I went to the stone circle that day because I was always going to go to the stone circle. Please try to understand. Sister Agnes said God gave us free will. He does not control us like puppets. We are always free to choose. And that's the biggest test of them all, what we choose. I did not choose the stone circle, but it's where I ended up anyway because Sister Agnes was wrong. I'm not sure if it's me in particular who was robbed of free will or if we all were. Sister Agnes was wrong about a lot of things. Her God, your God, could not have prepared me for what was actually out there, for the sick white that gleamed in the darkness, for the things that sat in my marrow like tar stuck to the bottom of a pit. It all started, I think, when the carnival came to our town a lifetime ago. Sister Agnes told us the carnival would be full of God's tests. We were supposed to trust in his plan for us instead of asking fortune tellers who consort with demons. And we were supposed to know that the sweetest treat of all is preparing ourselves for God, not caramel apples. At the carnival, the fortune teller looked a lot like Sister Agnes, which I thought was funny. The same squat stature, wrinkled skin, gnarled hands, and dark beady eyes. But the fortune teller dressed in purple velvet instead of a habit and wore a tangle of gold necklaces where Sister Agnes's cross was. I wondered out loud to my friends if they were sisters who chose different gods. Becca looked at me sideways over her cup of apple cider and asked me how seriously I was taking this. I shrugged. The fortune teller Agnes waved us into the tent. The darkness was thick and smoky inside, punctuated by 1,000 tiny candles. I sat on the sparkly cushions that surrounded her little table. My friends, it seemed, did not follow. "What do you want to know?" the fortune teller asked without looking up. I wanted to know everything. Was magic real? If not, what was the point? Would reality ever wear itself strange and thin for me? I settled instead on something that seemed simpler. "Do I have free will?" I asked. "Is God testing me? Sister Agnes says I wasn't even supposed to visit you because of the demons." The fortune teller cackled. "No demons here," she said, much to my disappointment. "I suppose we all have free will, right? Let me read your cards. They'll tell me what you'll do with that free will of yours." The fortune teller watched me now, shuffling the cards in her hands with surprising dexterity. Sister Agnes could barely open a pack of chalk half the time. "We can be influenced by many things," the fortune teller said. "Karma, past lives, ancestors. You, girl, have your ancestors all around you, calling to you, pulling your bones like strings." The fortune teller dealt one card, a tall stone tower like the ones they keep Rapunzel in, but with the skeleton lopsided and gleaming at the base of the turret. She tutted under her breath. She pulled another card. It was the same. She stopped and glanced up at me. Then she pulled a third card. It was still the same round, weathered stone turret piercing the ground like a sword. She pulled more and more and more, I lost count, until they formed a circle of stones on her table. "Aren't they supposed to be different?" I asked, leaning forward. Her head snapped back and she stared at me. She looked less and less like Sister Agnes. The candles on her table flickered against her hooked nose and her eyes went dark. I swear the cards on the table started to skitter like beetles. "Get out," the fortune teller said. I scrambled to my feet and slapped the $20 bill you had given me on the table. I know I shouldn't have spent it all on the fortune teller, but I was too scared to ask for change. And then I ran to my friends outside. I didn't tell them. They wouldn't have believed me. It's not like you believed me either. If you had, do you think we could have stopped it there? On Monday, Sister Agnes had no answers for me, but she did call you and say she was very concerned about me. You were already concerned about me, of course, because I spent my entire weekends on D&D campaigns, the local comic book shop, and you didn't really get that. You didn't like when I found them at a physical store in the next town over, and of course, I never told you about discovering the Order of the East Temple hidden away in the old rundown textile factory. The members of the temple believed me when I told them the story. They spoke to me like I had an aura of broken glass. They looked at me like maybe for the first time they would see the kind of magic that every goddamn person in every fucking temple and coven and meeting group is secretly hoping for, no matter how much they pretend they're not. But then nothing ever happened and I was just the newbie from the suburbs. Mier, one of the senior members, asked me about my heritage one evening after a long ritual, sipping wine on the threadbare velvet couches that Carrie found on the curbside. The beeswax pillars had nearly burnt all the way down, wax seeping onto the concrete floor. "I'm Welsh mostly," I told her. "There's a lot of magic and folklore there, you know that, right?" Mier said, eyes locking onto mine over the rim of her red wine, the liquid reflecting her steady gaze. "Yeah, a little bit," I said. "My mom doesn't talk about it much." Mier slammed her glass down on the old steamer trunk we used as a coffee table and stared at me. "That's it, of course. Go to Wales. Let the bones of your ancestors sing you home." I clung to the idea of going to Wales because Mier told me to. She seemed like she knew more than me and could recite spells without looking at the book and draw perfect pentacles from memory. When I told you I wanted to study abroad, I think you immediately stressed about the cost, but I finally wanted to do something normal, so you told me we'd figure it out. The scholarship figured it out for us. When I arrived, my bones did sing there, a lilting kind of hymn at the castle on the hill and the little tea shop tucked away in an alley. Mier had been right. I waited for a black dog on a moor, a hooded man on a misty day, an invitation scrawled upon a curl of vellum. Nothing happened. Weeks passed. The Mier song spiraled out of reach. "Have you seen the countryside?" slid across my screen one day, a message from Mira. Before I could answer, my phone was pinging with links to different places, castles and cliffs and burial tombs. None of them made the song louder, but I had a sudden sinking feeling that if I went back home and told Mira I had just waited around for something to happen, she wouldn't like me anymore. "I'm planning on it," I wrote back. There was an upcoming bank holiday and our professor had encouraged us to enjoy the long weekend. A henge had already claimed me, of course, but I couldn't have known that. So I made it out like I had done the choosing, printing all the site's pictures out and spreading them around my flat, blissfully empty with my roommates off to Ibiza. I prepared a cup of loose leaf tea with a kind of tender and wild ritual that even Carrie would have been proud of, I think. And then I drank it. Sometimes we do know how things are going to end. The cup of tea consumed, the bone white china left somewhat maligned by the haze, the swollen black leaves at the bottom where they belong, the wet white gleaming. Let this remain. I stared at the leaves until I saw something, glimpsed an outline or an impression. I told myself it looked like a stone circle just outside the city with a wide altar stone and tall square slabs. It didn't. Instead, the leaves showed me a crown of small stones, stout like towers, studded into the grass. What I mistook for the altar stone was actually the burial chamber, and of course, the bones. I didn't know that. I swear I did not. And I will leave it there. And it gets a lot weirder after that. So if you like that.
Woo, woo, woo! La 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 la.
It certainly
you,
does get a
everyone.
lot. It certainly does get a lot weirder after that. Thank you, Victoria. Please go and read the rest of Victoria's story.
It gets much worse.
Yes. Yes, and you can read much of what you've heard here tonight and more at our website, sortes.co. Right now, we are going to take a brief intermission, 5 minutes to refill your glasses and take a comfort break. And you know, I don't run away. If you want to go outside, I couldn't blame you. I have to stay here. Jeremy makes me. But yes, please, we'll be back in 5 minutes. Or talk amongst yourselves. You don't have to leave.
Unmute.
Yes, I'll mute Jeremy, and the rest of you can unmute yourself.
No.
I was just kidding. Please stay. I'm muting myself because I have a drink. See.
Can't do it. Come on. Go about your business. We'll be right back. Recycle. Do you need How's the music going for everyone? So, Kevin? It's great. It's very good intermission, isn't it? Are you enjoying?
It's very good, but I want Cajun food.
Now look here, if you're not enjoying the intermission, I'll pull this intermission right over.
No, excellent.
Oh, Paul likes it. He just wants Cajun food now.
Yeah, there you go.
I know. I make a very good vegan gumbo and vegan jambalaya, actually. Wow. All right. Sorry.
Jeremy's a vegan, if anybody hadn't heard.
Stop that.
Vegan jambalaya sounds fantastic.
It is fantastic. Come on over. I'm hungry right now. We'll do it.
Doesn't that take like 6 hours to make?
Well, yeah, because the first 5 hours are moving in with the other vegan. So
I'll be right back.
No, it's terrifying.
I just last night I was at a new brewery and I got myself a crowler of beer, which I love because when I hold a crowler, I look even comically smaller than I already am. I'm even more like a hobbit than I am generally. It's just regular can. Yes, yeah. I mean, it's just a big can.
So, is this still intermission? I think it is.
Yeah, I was just chatting. Please.
Oh,
Yeah.
very nice. Kevin, how much more time in the intermission?
I was gonna have 2 minutes, but now since you're asking me, maybe we should just get started again. I don't know.
Maybe a few more minutes, a few more seconds, just a moment.
Sure. Yeah. Give us, I guess, some more music. Sure. Why not?
We acknowledge I think we made it some time.
Okay. All right. I've had enough. Yes. All right. Well, thank you. That was the intermission. You'll find a longer intermission if you watch, the film, the 10 Commandments. That's like a 15-minute intermission.
Oh,
Even on the VHS tape, which we had as a child. Anyway, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us. This is I don't think anybody left. This is the reading for Sorts 6, A Thorough Enemy of Fortune. Thank you to our readers in the first half. We have 4 more readers for you tonight. And we are going to start off with Joshua Martin.
wait. I'm sorry, Kevin.
I have a question.
Can we encourage people to bring their videos back up?
If you would like to
If you would like.
video, please do so. But no pressure. Joshua, I actually, before I read your bio, I'll read your bio first. Joshua Martin is a Philadelphia-based writer and filmmaker who currently works in a library. He is the author of the book Vagabond, Fragments of a Whole from Schism Neuronics. He has had pieces previously published in the Vital Sparks, Breakwater Review, Ink and Voices, the Free Library of the Internet Void, and Paragraph Line. His films have screened at various film festivals, including the Pineapple Underground Film Festival, New Filmmakers, Film Alfresco, Views from the Underground, and the Shooting Wall Film Festival. Please welcome Joshua with me. And Joshua, please let me know. I can pull up, if you would like to show your visual poems, I'm happy to display them on my screen, or if you want to display them on yours, that's totally up to you.
Yeah, if you want to bring them up, that would be fine. That would be good. So yeah, most of these are visual, so I'm not going to read too many of them. Just the last 2, because they can't really, as you'll see, they don't work as well being read, but the last 2 I will do. So this first one is called Wraths and Other Thermal Variations. Hear ye, touch the skin and glisten the stairs that burn the lake shore, and now must lament our toes until our vibrating stomach muscle can reorient and become whole meatballs again. And this one is called As to the Age of Reason Collapsing. Hugo had to rabbit and clear into next week with cloudy eyes close to the murky quality of milk, not oat or almond or other yuppie varieties, but the old-fashioned stuff. A moment before Memento sent him on a spinning trajectory towards reincarnated goo. Hugo, being without enough seeing, the pale thunder on the horizon briefly sheltered. Hugo, weeping, spilled jars of marmalade on stacks of mispronounced letterboxes, added and subtracted from millisecond to millisecond, and then violently undulating. In sync, a voice that lifts as much as it shifts, Hugo recalls, less than a folded chair away, and I'll be the never-ending jailbird of damage. Petty and carless in my stumped trivia contest regret, bare and inaudible among medals, hedgehogs, and promise keepers, without a sadly oversized sweater against my forehead cheek. All my relatives succumb to perspiration, and at some future date, a wedding massacre, predators with collapsed eggs, all alone on Earth, as runny as the famous house on stilts, loosely clamped down, and mice come out of my ears. And I haven't survived the crash in at least a decade. Due date, another solemn reprieve I long to ignore, while the playwright shuts his teeth in the dresser drawer. To rattle and hum, fists outstretched, creating in my life a stormy weather partition, which leads me to the land of popsicle cravings, where models recite sonnets, where eat duck, where crackers are the pond scum garnish, where a burning bush is a euphemism, where card catalogs triumph, where inner thighs hide treasure maps, where all I see is enough to flex my nostrils and inspire my kneecaps to scream, the flux of flecks of monstrous beekeeping in an indeterminate grass skirt of the chunky variety, while I recoil at all goals great and small until the uselessness of my shoes becomes obvious and I inject enough tiger's milk to grow another 3 feet. Before Hugo's natural inclinations yield amazement and a tube of sores is used to cover the length of his body, there's a cry of havoc that stretches out as if in vowel expansion, a foot crossing in the parallel diameter of a hell squealing inside a shell that once held a cobra but now smelled of beef stock. Hugo, 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 and the cardboard cutout sneezed cheese with holes to spare, the hips that saunter in military style of wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. A type of fermentation previously unheard of had occurred on Hugo's watch. Meanwhile, factories close. Meanwhile, a diamond. Thereafter, a sliding torso on an escalator. Midwise and straightening company picnic reservoir. Violence, as Hugo indicated, could never replace genitalia. Not for now and now forevermore. Then piercing his left cheek and humming a sorrowful, gasping, dirigible greed cocktail to the former king of Spanish fly, Hugo had to still his shin and grab his ankles and bathe his enigmas and inhale until his prospective authority could downwardly indicate a table that did not require more than 2 legs to stand. A last gasping guilt meant to retrieve the questionnaire. All Hugo's great and small, all fires and enjoyment fit for the sinkhole, a time that Hugo could not endure and had forgotten to watch. And then I'm just going to read a short excerpt from the book mentioned. It's called Vagabond. You can buy that. Schism Neuronics. Just a short thing. You don't need to know anything about it. Just give you a little taste of what it's like. Burnt cigarette ash, smiling like Pa, drinking soda pop in chambers of nuclear kites, rolling down a captain's shirt into a pot of filthy white men wearing swastikas over vulgar tattoos, of Marion Davies lip-syncing to Irving Berlin songs, like the Lord of Flatbush, mothers crying for children, and gentle sex with a mongoose, in high heels and leather pants. The grin suits you fine like a monkey's paw, like Shelley Duvall in the Beowulf manuscript. This is when Corinne stopped spinning her yarn and turned to find out where she belongs among pictures of Carol Dempster, a tame kitten swallowing swords with William Tell apples on their heads, and oranges like Leon Trotsky in their nose, and dirty astronomical rivers, where rich automatons brush up on medieval history, ran into a shoe store and laughed, and as long as eyes are green and hair is brown, don't pretend you can't. But Mary Pickford's spunk is born a second time in a baby without any hands, eating a diseased lamb and singing Indian songs. That's songs from India, not American Indians. But if you believe in work and in screwing or in a clock or holding cows under your shirt, oh, for Pete's sake, Margaret, I can't believe you're digging holes in the middle of the street just to bury a fish. Can't you find something more useful to do with 1,000 unpaid workers? Or don't you believe in capitalism? Maybe you're a commie. Maybe you're African at heart or have a heart of gold or a silver tooth of Krishna, the drug peddler, the pimp of Alabama, the dancer of old-fashioned dances. Now, Margaret, I can't stress this enough. You are not human, nor is Alan Thicke your father or Jay Underwood your brother, and I don't care how many facelifts you can afford. You'll never look like Bela Lugosi. And anyway, he was a drug addict, not to mention Hungarian. Remember me to the volcano. If he has anything to say in return, let me know, or just go. That's it. Thanks a lot. Jeremy, listening.
Woo! Thank you. I've got music if anyone wants it. Little more music.
Thank you.
That's all.
Thank you, Joshua. Up next is Shine Ballard. Shine currently creates and resides on this plane/planet. Please welcome Shine Ballard.
Hello, guys. First off, I wanted to preface this with, I may lose connection. If that's the case, I live out in the boonies. Just continue on without me. I'll be back as soon as I can. This first piece is titled Precious Relics. I'll try to give you this from the memory. I've never wasted time fretting over an instrument, machine head spinning, tuning the dissonance of inexperience. Intoning, I became otherly. The machines may make noise, but for them I've no nostalgia. Model numbers, serials, pulleys, pieces, hammers, ribbons, brake shoe. The one-time vehicle for stories with unwaving arms, guiding. Paul is not its name. The stories require the movement of mouthing. The device, though, always stopping, restarting, returning. The clacking clatter of the pinyon dog is not precious to me, only is my sound and its phrasing. This next piece is titled As Nature Wills. Kerouac's babbling again. Ashberry's regurgitating Plast despair never dims. Catullus's Homeric eschewals, never not neo. Baldwin's extemporizing eternal. Ed Eslin's compounded in motion. Meleager's thirst remains unquenched. The unrelenting panoply. These voices aren't voices at all. They're echoes, interposing pentimenting, art at once below yet still salienting, not saying, restating, sustaining sounds resounding, non-dissolving vibrations, hums none quiet, never quiets themselves. If one were to await a pause, a place in which to place their sound, they would find their noise dissembered in silence, interred in volumelessness, inversely palimpsest. But one's voice must disrupt the waves, as a rock would, will do always, the nature of things. I've been Shine Ballard, and you've been gracious to lend me your ear. Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you so much, Shine. That was great. I'm glad that your connection held up. That was amazing. Up next, we have Luke Condzal. Luke was born and raised in Manhattan and currently lives in Brooklyn. In addition to writing fiction, he's I always struggle with this word, pseudonymously. We'll fix that in post. Created and performed in the comedy web series. He had a pseudonym, and he created and performed in the comedy web series. Lawrence Corey, native New York speaker. Welcome, Luke, please.
Go Luke, go Luke.
Hi everyone. Thanks.
Sorry, wait, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. Sorry.
Thanks to Jeremy and Kevin for including me among all this great work. This is from my short story, Two Tourists, which is in issue 6. It's just gonna be a few, the first few paragraphs. Two young American bozos. The short, stocky, bald one, face Remolopoulos, his destitute ancestors having hailed from the Greek Isles to wallow in the blood and fat of Manhattan's diner business, waddled in wide struts, a bare tanned dome round as an avocado pit glinting neon with vice against Bangkok's red light district, or the first of the three the pair intended to visit that night. And a foot above him, the tall one, a mongoose toast guard, good old Wyoming boy. Narrow but sturdy, he hardly survived the swelter. Still, his goodwill stayed inviolate, and above a burned forehead, his blonde hair stood unruly, the pretty yellow remains of childhood, a thick pelt there to warm him, along the snow caps and high peaks of his vascular Scandinavia, where some generations ago his pale skin might have likened him to the blue ice enough to hunt in stealth its leopards with spears or bare hands and make shelter of their skins, ornaments of their entrails. They stumbled out of their tuk-tuk, both hit their heads on the low bar of its roof. Unscathed, though, did they remain on their hunt for what could easily be perceived here on this little street stained and glimmering, wafting the deep odors of humans and fish as wholesome fun. It wasn't as though they hadn't been already exposed to or engaged or indulged in this kind of activity during their travels together, but always it came about in a nervous way. Face would insist they go down a chosen street one more time, his red cheeks hairy and mouth dry. By then, in what would be their fifth or sixth stroll down the same drenched stretch of asphalt, they browsed ceaselessly the same human catalog, made commodities of the various masseuses perched with solicitous limbs and playful taunts outside the dozen or more establishments, speaking to them on a first-name basis, having perhaps already the night before on a preliminary moonlit casing exchanged contact information, promises of future business. He would invariably wonder aloud if, after working up such a sweat and investigation, might they want to have another meal first? Meanwhile, Mongoose would make intermittent claims about sitting this rendezvous out. He had had enough. And in the suspensory moments between such revelations of guilt and penance, declare boldly his eternal affections for a masseuse double his age who had batted false eyelashes at him. Sometimes they would decide on a place. Sometimes they would give up and go eat pork and drink beer. They fed pangs of hunger, soothed battered dignities and prolapsed egos, sat to rest lower backs aching from stiff hostel beds and heavy backpacks. And with each meal, each bite, each variety of animal protein devoured, they nourished the greedy colonies of hook, tape, and pinworms that had swelled obscenely in their bellies and infected their temperament. Medication and utter failure, zero reprieve from the wiggling purple and white wrath inside the toilet bowl. At first terrifying, but before long a quantifiable badge of honor to be dealt with later back in the States. Land of food processed beyond contamination, of soft sheets and bright doctors' offices, land of cures for curses, they thought. Tonight, though, bloated guts padded, tongues salted, they were determined to experience, instead of a back alley relegated to carnal fondling and clumsy intercourse, a spectacle of human sexuality that included lights and drinks, actual discourse with less of the transactional wretchedness they found in the parlors. So go-go bars it would be. They were moving up in the world, sophistication unbounded. Immediately, they were disgusted with the clientele, old and fat and balder than faced a lot of them were, and somehow, despite the grandness presented to the fellas on the internet, a clean and colorful haven for prostitution, for severe observation, and even amid the relentless pinks, purples, reds, blues whirled against the sky, the grime consumed them. Myriad exposed buttocks glistened iridescent atop stools of dull metal. Refractions of the flesh crossed smoky windows beyond which obscure fingers danced and mingled. Vivid pinging of half-dead speakers, heedless chatter of high heels and negotiation, the hushed musings of odd men too old for throbbing lights, but never too old or too fat or too bald to be lonely, to risk the true prospect of disease for companionship and glitter. All of it noise, all of it musky, all of it registering silly and confounded around them, the young men. And below, the ground stood sticky, soiled illuminations of littered cigarette butts, painted streaks of steam and vomit, place of sex, place of fluids, they conceded to each other optimistically. Down the street the two went. And there's more that goes on. Thanks.
Woo!
For having me.
Woo! Excellent.
Right.
That is a wild and whirling story, and it goes on. So please check out the rest of it on our website. To tourists.
Aw.
last but not least, as he dances his way onto the stage, my good friend, Warren C. Longmire. Warren is a writer, software engineer, and educator from the bad part of North Philadelphia. His writing has been published in American Poetry Review, 1111, The Painted Bride Quarterly, and the upcoming Best American Poetry Anthology of 2021. Warren likes jazz, being Black, video games, and suffering. You can find his work on Instagram at A Longmire Writer and WYOU W Longmire. And I'm happy and proud to say that he is also a part of my Dungeons and Dragons campaign. Warren,
Yes.
welcome. Which we might do one of those one day. I don't know.
I hope so. It was really nice to have a character who's just not attractive at all. I have a very small half. Is it a half orc? I think I changed it. No, I'm a gnome. I'm a dark gnome this time, and that was very exciting to me. Hey everybody, very very happy to be here. Loves Sorts, loves everything that Sorts does. Extremely pleased to be able to be a part of the family. Quick shouts to Patrick Blagrave, who is out in the masses. I read his book, Prophet from cover to cover like 2 weekends ago, and it's incredible. I just want to make stickers of all of those poems and plaster them all over the city. So hey Patrick, yeah, I felt the need to be able to release that insane book. Most of these poems come from the third section of upcoming book that I'm putting out called Open Source. This section is called No One Knows What They're Doing at Microsoft. And poem inside of it, starting off with, is This is the Last Time I Swear. At Vertex, we call one browser tab worth of inputs a scene. Each scene is collected into CRUD functions representing the creation, reading, updating, and deletion of a resource, of which there are almost 50 max. My resource at Vertex is the taxpayer. A taxpayer is an entry type, a start, an indeterminate end date, and a reason code. My HP laptop clicks into half cubes with a heavy plastic switch reminiscent of classic ThinkPad every morning, 2 monitors on articulated arms. One in landscape shows the scene where my client edits the taxpayer, applies a discount code, verifies their taxability, identifies multiple jurisdictions of possible equivalent levy items rendered in scrolling blue combo box after they are fetched from our backend team's API, the local imposition tax of the Chocopah Reservation is a district in Arizona. I don't know what I'm supposed to know. I just know in code, my second monitor is in portrait mode. Red warning text says I need another space after line 305's colon. The taxpayer logs of the object inside, and the object we are defining is a unique key when tagged with a $sign. Our Fuda app lunch program says American Halal is serving us today. We slouch, eating lamb drowning in white while CNN captions what is breaking outside. This poem's called Series C. It's a reference to the last stage a startup is in before they go public. Black cards in a Manhattan rooftop bar slap heavy because they're made of metal under a plastic coat. Everything is on the enterprise. We said 2 words about business, so why not raise the rent? You can sleep in the pods for sleep in the section of the bullpen where the data scientists meet. The science behind the new iteration of our machine was built by a Swiss team in the last 6 months. No one in the world knows how it works or why everything needs to be rebuilt, but it will. Our child production app is half in stealth. We cut our human costs because humanity doesn't scale well. Weekly, we graph our customer yield so the angel investors let us lose money and still go to the gym for free. No one knows what they're doing at Microsoft. No one knows what they're doing at Microsoft. No one knows what they're doing at Electronic Arts. No one knows what they're doing at the Disney subsidiary tucked in the Zone 3 London exurb, where the lighters hang math in the wireframes and render farms rung hot, calculating and animated birds' articulations for a story of war propaganda backed by the voice of Ricky Gervais. No one knows what they're doing when the consoles upgrade and the programmers invent new ways to display bullet sheen, locked in their anime-lined fabric cubes and corralled into bullpens for 60 hours a week with no overtime. No one knows what they're doing at Amazon, where somewhere in North Virginia, availability zone 1 detects a spike, and the night watchman breathes the antiseptic sheen of the router bots, spitting some ardent startup's mock-up of a god. No one knows what they're doing in the incubator inside the insurance company that owns a stake in Beyonce's thighs, led by the CEO whose child thinks it's dad's job to fly, where the flock of failed musicians he bought were rebuilt in boot camps of the mind and poured a margin of excess into a spreadsheet budget to build a box that approximates a time of death. This is kind of sort of a found poem. It definitely has some additions for me. It's actually built off of a Reddit thread about a search engine that no longer exists. So some members of Google decided that Google was bullshit, and they tried to make a search engine called Cull. And it was, people used it, but it was kind of weird. It never completely gave you exactly what you were looking for. It always gave you things that were just like kind of 2 or 3 degrees away from what you were looking for. And so there was a Reddit thread that went around of saying, well, like maybe that means that a cull means something when it comes to kind of like finding the distance between the meaning of 2 words. So this is what came out of that. Cull theory. It can be said that there is no purer human creation than a unit of measurement. It is both a tool and a medium, a creative force and an objective flashlight. It is a word that scales and gives birth to a new dimension, a piece of length squared into a surface, a conversion from light into distance. With that in mind, let's make one right now. Let's make a cule a certain type of unit of measurement. Let's say a cule is one level of abstraction away from the reality of a situation. For example, let's say that you asked me for a hamburger. At 1 cule, you asked me for a hamburger and I give you a raccoon. At 2 cules, you asked me for a hamburger and then you turn around to realize that I do not actually exist. Where I was once standing, a pristinely photographed picture of a hamburger rests on the ground. At 3 cules, you wake up as a hamburger. You start to scream only to have special sauce fly out of your lips. The world is in sepia. At 4 cules, why are we speaking German? A mime cries softly as he cradles a young cow. Your grandfather stares at you as the cow falls apart into patties. You look down to see me with pickles for eyes. I am singing the song that gives birth to the universe. At 5 cules, you ask for a hamburger, and I give you a hamburger, and you raise it to your lips and take a bite. Your eye twitches involuntarily. Across the street, a father of 3 falls down the stairs. You swallow and look down at the hamburger in your hands. I give you a hamburger. And you swallow and look down at the hamburger in your hands. You cannot swallow. There are children at the top of the stairs. A pickle shifts uneasily under the bun. I give you a hamburger. And you look at my face, and I am pleading with you. The children are crying now. You raise the hamburger to your lips. Tears stream down your face. As you take a bite, I give you a hamburger. And you are on your knees, and you plead with me to go across the street, but I can only hear children's laughter. I give you a hamburger. You are screaming as you fall down the stairs. I am your child. You cannot see anything. You take a bite of the hamburger. The concrete rushes up to meet you, and you awake with a start in your own bed. Your eye is still twitching involuntarily. You give me a hamburger. As you kill me, I do not make a sound. I give you a hamburger. And one more poem, if you will allow me. I love this poem. It's based on a documentary that was put out in the early days of Netflix streaming that some of you may have remembered. The first documentary in the series was called Helvetica. It was a history of fonts. And the second in the series was called Objectified, and it was all about product design. So this is a poem called Objectified. Everywhere and everything and all the ones that made it, the chalk marked a feet of track to lay, the words curated and outlined in black, the professional's font, the fabric architect slept with his best friend, the publicist mood. How you made it, the stretch of leather stripped of hair that won the shoe, the herder preferred for some reason, the correct feed and strain of grass, a shift in the season, doesn't escape the intent that birthed it, the belch of the smelting factory. Her grandfather's guts, but not his uncle's, spilled on the street, noted the air and guessed right, the one that won, my favorite translation of sign, the blue of New Plato, the tolerance of my lap, the thickness of her palm, and I need it by Monday. I prefer it drizzled with polyurethane, non-stick, matte finished, make it noon clown white and money green as a start, measure it twice, make 3,000 units, do it with love. Thank you.
Woo! Woo!
That was Warren Longmire, everyone.
Woo!
And
I'm
that's
playing music
tonight. Okay.
A little music, please.
And then I have more to say. Yes.
Hey, you gotta love
I was gonna. Yep.
Can I play a little more?
Sure.
Okay.
Everyone, you heard tonight, Robert Wexelblatt, Kailey, Tedesco, Christian Bufo, Konstantinos, Patrinos, Victoria Mier, Joshua Martin, Shine Ballard, Luke Condzal, and Warren Longmire. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate you coming. We are Sorts Magazine. This was Sorts 6, A Thorough Enemy of Fortune. I am dropping all of our social media and contact information in the chat. Should you like to submit something to issue 7 or 8 or in the future. And I would also like to, as it has been alluded to, give a shout out and a big thank you to my co-editor, Jeremy Eric Tenenbaum, who does an incredible amount of work for this magazine. I just sort of lay on a couch and sigh most of the time. And he does all of the layout and the emailing and everything. And it is his birthday on Sunday. So please wish me a happy birthday to Jeremy, my dear friend, who will play some music, I'm sure. And thank you all for coming, especially on this Friday in June. It's lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Can I play a song for all of you? Can I play one song? Take yourselves off of mute. I hate you on mute. I hate you on mute. Make some noise. But listen to this.
Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are a jumping, that old cotton is high. Your pappy's rich and your mammy's good looking. Hush, little baby, honey, don't you cry. One of these.
Happy summer, people. Happy summer.
Yes.
Well,
Summer is a coming in. Please burn someone a Hunker Man if you get the chance. And yes, enjoy your evening. Thanks, everybody. We're gonna hang out for a little bit, and I don't know if you're local, I might end up at like Dirty Frank's or something. So come say hello. That's all she wrote.